New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. Please help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Home Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, come be you.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, and it is time to dive into this whole concept of what does it mean, what does it require, what does it challenge us to do to have inclusive churches, and not so much why we want to do that. If you're here, you probably already have answered your why. But definitely, what we like to talk about and think about is the how. What kinds of conversations do we need to be having with people in our communities? What kinds of responsibilities do leaders in inclusive churches have? And what do you do when it gets a little sticky, a little challenging? And finally, we also sometimes want to talk about how do we celebrate our progress. Today is a Tuesday toolkit, so we'll be together for about 30 minutes. Some of you know when I have a guest, we tend to go 50 minutes, 50 to 55 minutes, because it's a conversation. But when it's just me, I try to keep it to 30 or 35 minutes, give you a little bit of your time back. And I'm really happy if you join me. And if you want to be like Wayne, you could say hello to me and to everybody else in the chat. Hello, Wayne. Hello, Anita. And hello to everybody, whether you put your name in or a comment in or not. So what are we talking about today? Today we are talking about Black History Month. Now, back in November, I think, late October or early November, I might have done a show about Black History Month so that you would have, 3 months to prepare and think about what you were going to do. But this morning I thought, there are people who either didn't know to think about it then or didn't get around to planning anything. And now Black History Month is 2 weeks away. And they want to do something, but they don't know what. So I decided that I would just share some ideas of things that you don't need a lot of planning time to execute on. But before I go into those tips and ideas, I want to share this commentary. It is really important that you understand and have clarity about why you are doing or saying anything at all about Black History Month. Really important, because you don't want it to come across as performative. Oh, it's Black History Month, we got to do something. Well, no, you don't. Really, you don't have to do anything different from what you normally do. So if you decide to do something because it's Black History Month, then you need to be able to answer the question that some of the members of your church will ask you. Like, why are we doing that? Why do I need to know that? Why this? Why that? And you need to have a clear answer that is something different from, well, because it's Black History Month and we want Black people to know they're welcome here. That would not be a good reason to do anything related to Black History Month. Or, well, it's Black History Month and we ought to do something, or we're just trying to, look like we are inclusive when there's no visible diversity in our community. So you need to have a reason. Now, there are hundreds of acceptable and some even admirable reasons, but you want your reason to be related to your spiritual values or principles, or you want your reason to be connected to a commitment you've already made about being inclusive, if it's in your vision statement or your purpose statement or your mission, or if it is a part of an ongoing initiative of things that you have been doing along the way, or if it is the kickoff to an ongoing initiative. You want to be able to say that clearly. And so I want to start there, because I think one of the unfortunate mistakes that happen is that people will say, oh, I'm so proud. Like, they'll be really proud that they're doing something, and they don't understand why it backfired, or why people thought it was a waste of time, or why they got negative feedback from members of their church or members of their community. And when they answered the question or the challenge, it didn't help. So let's start there. Make sure that if you are going to do things that are specifically related to Black History Month, then be sure you have a clear why, and that why is related to your mission, your vision, your values, your spiritual principles, your faith tradition, or your individual church's mission and or purpose. Okay. Having said that, then let's dive into some ideas. I'm going to share with you some ideas related to classes. I'm going to share with you some ideas related to music and musicians. I'm going to share with you some ideas related to your newsletters, or your email newsletters. I'm going to share with you some ideas about signage, and then I'll end with some ideas about if you are a minister, or if you were, or someone who will be giving talks during the month. And I'm putting that to last because, right, the show, Inclusive Church, we're really clear that leaders are serving in many different roles. And so I'm not going to start with the one that most directly affects ministers more. So we'll end with talks. So let's talk about classes. You may classes and events. So you may be planning some event, or you may be teaching a class, or you may be the TA, the teaching assistant, or the technical assistant for a class. And so in that way, you're part of the leadership, or, and if you're teaching the class, obviously you are part of the leadership. And so, regardless of what the class is about, if you are starting each class with an inspirational thought or a spiritual practice, or if you're closing, as part of your benediction or a closing spiritual practice, you could decide during the month of February that you quote a Black author or a Black teacher or leader as the inspiration or the grounding for that spiritual practice. You could use a quote from a book from an author who is Black. You could you can actually use a meditation. If you are doing meditation, you could go online and find a meditation that was delivered by someone who is Black. But there is a caution when you do any of these. Please do not say, in honor of Black History Month, we're going to feature this quote by Howard Thurman. No. Now, what you can say is, for today's spiritual practice, we're going to base it on a quote by Howard Thurman, who is a Black minister and philosopher, blah, blah, blah. You can acknowledge, and in fact, I want you to acknowledge that the person you're quoting is Black. But the phrase, in honor of Black History Month, like, hey, it's really special. We don't quote Black people any other time of the year, but because it's Black History Month, we're going to quote somebody Black. Ah, yay. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Use the information, use the ideas, use and build on the content, and absolutely acknowledge that this person is Black, but don't play up, oh, we're pulling out the Black folks this month because it's Black History Month. Acknowledge and inform. And the reason you do still need to inform people that you're quoting someone Black, you should do that really 12 months of the year. But you do need to do that, because otherwise, if they're not accustomed to you quoting someone who's Black or Asian or Latinx or someone other than someone who's white, then they're going to assume that person is white if they don't know who it is. Now, obviously, if you're quoting Maya Angelou, if you're quoting Oprah Winfrey, if you're quoting, there are some people if you're quoting Martin Luther King, there are some people, if you were to quote them, that you could assume people know that they're Black. But depending on what quotes you get or what inspiration you use, you most likely will need to acknowledge that this is someone who is Black. And as I glibly said, really, you could be doing that all year long, not just in Black History Month. So, another thing that's related to classes and events. So if you are going to integrate in to your flow in the class content, and you may or may not be able to do this with only 2 or 3 weeks before you are actually leading this class. but you get bonus points from me if you have the author or the quote directly related to your content or the subject. For example, within Centers for Spiritual Living, there is a course about Emerson. And anytime I teach Emerson, I make sure that I inform students in the class about the book, The Anti-Slavery Writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And people are always shocked, not just surprised, but shocked that there's a whole book that are notes from and transcriptions of talks that he gave and articles that he wrote about anti-slavery. And so if I were teaching Emerson during the month of February, I would make sure one of my classes that I actually read from his writings and held up the book and gave people a link where they could buy the book and learn more about what Ralph Emerson had to say about the spiritual reasons for opposing slavery. Not the political reasons, but the spiritual reasons and what people of faith needed to do, what actions needed to be taken in order to affect a change, to be in alignment with moral and spiritual values. And we don't do a lot of that, and we don't do enough of that in New Thought that actually utilize our spiritual principles to motivate individual and collective action. And so many people, right, just are like, oh, well, I'm too spiritual. I don't get involved in all of that. Or I'm so spiritual. I will do my prayer work and that will shift everything. And so I love that Emerson is actually a model for taking action using our spiritual principle as a guide and standing up for faith-based principles utilized or becoming seen and used in the world. And so for all of us in New Thought who are like, or for not me, all of the people in New Thought who believe that it's one, just an individual focus, and two, that it's necessary to avoid the secular life or the secular issues that are in all of our human experience. Emerson was a great example. So I use that as an example too, because yes, it's Black History Month, and you can quote people who are not Black if it is pertinent and relevant. So a few years ago, I was coaching the leadership of a New Thought community in the South. And one of the things that they ended up doing, they did about 8 different things, but one of the things that they ended up doing was they ended up identifying people who were white, who were directly involved in the civil rights movement and who worked side by side with Black people and other people of color, and did marches, or they were sponsors, or they funded things. And so each week during the month, they highlighted one of those people because their community at that time was 95% white. And so they wanted to send the message during Black History Month that it was important for white people to, one, be aware of issues that negatively impacted people who were Black, and also that it was a responsibility for people of faith to be engaged in shifting and changing the status quo. And that was perfect for that church at that time, right? And so you have to determine what is important. Also related to classes and events. So I mentioned Emerson with that as one example of a class, but it could be any class that you are doing. You can find, especially with our access to the internet, you can find recorded talks, recorded meditations, recorded information that is available. In fact, if you're here with me on the New Thought Media Network, in the New Thought Media Network archives, if you go to the YouTube channel and just start searching, you can find all kinds of programming that features African American leaders, African American authors, speakers, and ministers. You can find recordings of Black History moments from years past and share them in your class or use them to open or close your class. So it is not difficult. It will just take a little bit of time. Okay, that's classes. Yes, I have to watch my time because this is a topic that would be really easy for me to talk about for 2 hours, but really I'm going to try to keep it within 30 to 35 minutes. So let's talk about music and musicians. Now, for most of us in our churches, the musicians are already lined up for February. We're in the last third of January. We know who the musicians are going to be for the month of February. But there are a couple things you can keep in mind. You can keep in mind that you can ask your musicians to find and use at least one song each week that is written by or known because it was performed by someone who is Black. And again, this would not be the big announcement of, because it's Black History Month, we went on a search and we found this song by Donny Hathaway. No. Now you could choose a Donny Hathaway song and you could introduce it by saying, and this is a beautiful song with an important message by African American artist Donny Hathaway, and then perform the song, right? It's back to the other thing. Do you know you're doing it because it's Black History Month? Yes, but every time in the course of delivering content, if you say the reason we're doing this is because of Black History Month, you're actually sending the message to people again that we don't have to highlight anybody Black any other time during the year. A mistake that many churches make is they'll hire guest musicians. And it'll be the one time in the year where they have a Black guest musician. And that is more harmful than good. If you've already done that, great. But make sure that between March and next January, you have invited Black musicians at least 2 or 3 more times. Otherwise, you are sending the message that the only time we have Black people is during Black History Month, and they don't exist any other time of the year. And I know that is not the message you desire to send. So what else can you do with music and musicians? You can ask your musicians to learn and play the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And in this case, this is one of the very few cases where it would be permissible to say, because it's Black History Month, we want to feature the Black National Anthem and we invite you to stand. Because many people in your community will not have heard it before and they will not understand what to do. And so you don't have to invite them to stand, and you definitely don't have to require them to stand. But if you do have any Black people in your congregation, when that song is sung or played, most, if not all, of the Black people will automatically stand up, and everybody else will be looking around like, why are they standing? Right? So it's not a requirement, but you probably verbally need to do an invitation to stand if you would like. There are two communities I know that their closing song for their Sunday service every Sunday during Black History Month is the Black National Anthem, but they've been doing that for years. And so they don't have to kind of introduce it the same way they did the first year or two. Song selections written by or made famous by Black performers. And one other thing just went through my mind, and that was music. I don't know. I lost it. Maybe it'll come back in the 5 minutes or so that I have. Newsletters and emails. Now, this is the one place where you probably can do generic, Black history information, Black history fact, inventors, scientists, historians, historic figures, because in your newsletters, like they go throughout the month. And so if you've already done some research or there are lots of easy access to that kind of information. If you did something like that, it wouldn't be at an event. It would be more in something that's a reference, and it would be Black History Moment or something like that. It's more passive. And it's not in the course of giving a spiritual lesson or creating a spiritual experience. So that would be okay. What would be preferable if you have a newsletter that goes out once a week, that you find 4 people who are Black who are either past or current leaders and achievers in your own faith tradition. Because if you can, it's always better to feature someone Black whose people have something in common with, right? Oh, they taught science and mind, or oh, they were a minister or are a minister, a unity minister, who also has done these 3 things, right? And that is what is ideal. That is better if you can find people who are Black from your own spiritual tradition. If you don't have time to do that and you still want to do something like in your newsletter or email, then you can feature authors and inventors and poets and people who your community may not know about. If you're going to do that, then don't use if let's say your newsletter comes out once a week, you only got 4. So don't use 4 people everybody's heard about. Like, be creative, maybe. All right, so I'll take my judgment out of that. And then let's talk about signage. It is okay to have some unique poster if you're in a building, right? And you, or even if you are setting up each week and taking down each week. If you wanted to do, 8.5 by 11 posters and put them in the bathroom behind the stall doors, or if you wanted to put, a welcome banner, or if you have access to someone who could create a theme, not a theme for the month or your theme for the month, but also somehow wrap in visually, something related to Black History Month, then that's great. That's really great to do. Not a requirement, but it's a little added plus. So you can create some signage, but again, your theme isn't Black History Month. It could be Black history related to whatever your spiritual theme is for the month. Last but not least, I'm going to talk a little bit about talks. So if you're a minister, or if you are not a minister but happen to be doing a talk during the month of February, then the same thing that I said about in classes applies. Like if my theme is prosperity and abundance, then I'm not going to change the theme because it's Black History Month, but I'm going to look for some quotes from people who are African American that are applicable to the topic or the theme for the month or the topic for the week, right? I'm also, if I'm doing the talks during February, then I'm going to look for maybe some snippets of other talks, or if I'm in Centers for Spiritual Living, I'm going to go online to YouTube and find the 4 videos that CSL Dallas did in 2018 or 2019 that are history moments, and they're 3 minutes each, and I might incorporate them into my talk because it is Black History Month, and then, weave it into whatever my theme is. So things like that are really powerful when you're on the platform and you're doing, excuse me, and you're the person giving the main talk. But the do not do's also apply here, right? Do not make the topic Black History Month unless you have a direct thread to your spiritual principles and beliefs and values. Do not just share general Black history on a Sunday morning or on a Wednesday evening, if that's when your weekly service is. Do not go in and say, oh, before I start my talk today, I want to tell you about Lewis Latimer and what he invented. Okay, now that's done. Let's talk about our real subject. So don't do that. But when you can, weave in. And if you need ideas for how to do that, then please reach out to me. Sometimes it is just a matter of knowing what to look for or where to look. But again, one of your biggest resources is going to be YouTube, because there are so many videos now available to you where you can then just take a snippet out, or the video itself could be used. And there's just so much. So if you have been thinking that you want to do something in a meeting that you are facilitating, or in a service that you are coordinating, but you just let time get away, and now Black History Month is upon us, I still want to encourage you to take the time to find 1 or 2 resources and then incorporate them into what you are doing in alignment with teaching a spiritually grounded lesson. And if you can do that, then you will be demonstrating to people that Black history is all of our history. It benefits us in our spiritually grounded life as well as our humanly grounded. My name is Tracy Brown. I hope at least one idea resonated with you or got you thinking about what you can do during Black History Month. And I will see you here next Tuesday and every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time for Inclusive Church, right here on the New Thought Media Network.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.